And we're live. Welcome everybody here to the Lakers Lowdown Podcast. I'm Anthony Irwin with the Lounge. We got some technical difficulties going on here. Here we go. Yeah, we have the Lounge background going on here for a pretty good reason. My Vikings are 3-0. My daughter Avery, who is watching this right now in the very next room. Hi, Avery. She's becoming the world's biggest Vikings fan. We were both running around shirtless in our living room today after the Vikings intercepted the CJ Stroud pass to essentially end the game. Jen decided not to join us in that activity, and her Saints lost. So those sports gods, man. You just never know how they're going to work. Today on the show, what we're going to be doing here is talking about Rob Pelinka and JJ Redick, their upcoming press conference that is scheduled for September 25th, which is Wednesday, and then media day, which will be October 1st, and then training camp opens up, and then you have games and all of that good stuff. And we will be kind of diving into that. And then, because it's Sunday, I'm going to be answering your guys' questions. So without any further ado, and after saying one more hello to my daughter, hi, Avi, I'm going to go ahead and dive on into the show. All right. So today, a quick reminder before we do anything, please do hit that subscribe button. Please do hit that like button. Consider it a nice little cover, a free little cover to join us in these Sunday activities and everyday activities now. At this point of the year, we are now an everyday show. And then if you guys are listening to this in the audio form, please do hit that subscribe button wherever it is that you get your podcasts. And help this thing grow. We're on the right track. We're going to keep this momentum going on into the season. Hopefully cross that 5,000 listener barrier before the season starts. That'd be great. The more this thing grows, the more cool things that we'll be able to do kind of as a community. But yeah, let's start with that Rob Pelinka, JJ Redick presser. It's really interesting to think that, Rob is going to have JJ up there with him. There aren't really questions that I need to ask JJ. Like it almost feels like you're making JJ a bit of a meat shield, so as to not take all of the Rob Pelinka questions, or so that all of the questions aren't about Rob Pelinka's offseason, which was very disappointing. I don't know. I get why he would do it, for that reason, but I think you're putting JJ in a tough spot there. It's going to be awkward. And then JJ, because he's the podcaster, because he's this great brand ambassador, he's going to want to step in there and try to explain all these things when that's just not really his responsibility. He didn't not make any trades. He didn't not make any additions to this roster. That's not JJ's fault. So, I guess there are a couple questions that you could ask JJ, but first and foremost with Rob, this feels kind of a weak move on his part. And then you can let JJ handle a scrum or an extra presser there at media day, so that you allow the focus in this first presser to be on you. Unfortunately, that's just not really how Rob operates, right? If he's there, always, ever present, omnipresent. If the Lakers are performing well, he takes any opportunity to hop on ESPN's broadcasts. He makes sure to be seen in the hallways. He does the occasional radio interview as well, if things are going well. And then when things aren't going so well, he has a tendency to just kind of disappear and hope that somebody else kind of takes that attention or helps him look a little bit better, while he kind of operates from the background. And, there's the other way you can explain that, if you want to look at him in a more favorable light, is to essentially say that he wants the work to speak for itself, which is fine. He just has no work to speak for this offseason, and he needs to speak for the fact that he didn't do anything. So I'm going to come to back. I'm probably going to come back to this topic over the course of the show as you guys ask your questions. A reminder, Please do get your questions in the form of a 5-star review on iTunes, and I'll answer those. Those take priority. If you want to leave a super comment, you can, and that will take priority here as well. I missed a couple super comments. So Justin Tyndall, if you're watching this, or if you want to send me a message with the questions that you asked on the Jersey episode that I did with Philip that I wasn't able to get to, I guess I could go back and try to find it. But if you do want to do that, cool. If you want to answer another one, I'll treat that one as like a free question if you want a free super comment, essentially, if you want to do it that way. But we do have a ton of questions. I am going to kind of fly through this episode because we have a ton of content to get to for the entirety of the show. And yeah, let's go ahead and dive on in. All right. So the first question that I'm going to take from my Twitter, I asked for questions here on Twitter. The first question that I'm going to answer, if you guys offer up proof that you're subscribed to the show, is 2 weeks with pay, writing in a potential Wizards midseason trade, who would you prefer the Lakers target, Kuz or Jordan Poole? Kuz would be the popular choice because he was a wing and a former Laker, but it feels like Poole could bring more impact based on his 3-point shooting and gravity. What say you? Hilariously, like, Jordan Poole has been pretty bad basically as a Wizard, and hilariously, like, the best he looked was against the Lakers, which ups the likelihood that the Lakers actually trade for him. But I would be pretty surprised if the Lakers went that route. Jordan Poole's reputation is kind of in the dirt. I got to look up Jordan Poole's what his trade value is. Let's see. I got to go to Fanspo. Where is it? I'll find it. But Fanspo trade machine. And he doesn't necessarily fill a position of need. I know everybody thinks that the Lakers need this upgraded point guard, but for the kind of upgrade that you need, Jordan is just not going to check enough boxes. He's going to be essentially a D'Angelo Russell. And like, maybe you can get an extra asset out of it because he has 3 years and 29, at 3 years left on his contract. It starts at 29.6 mil this year and goes up from there, I believe. So he's this like albatross of a contract, has serious questions about, his competitive fire, where his head is at. Obviously wasn't a great aspect of the Warriors' chemistry back when he was in Golden State, and wound up being a huge distraction that season. Now, granted, the larger distraction was Draymond Green punching Poole in the face, but you talk to some people behind the scenes, and like, it's not to say that he like had what was, got what was coming to him. I don't think it's anywhere near that kind of, like, I think that's kind of an ugly take on it. But there are enough people that you talk to who say, like, if it wasn't getting punched, he would have gotten benched. Or if it wasn't getting punched, he would have like been kind of exiled out of from the locker room, not physically, but they would have just tried to push him into a corner and not have to deal with his crap anymore. And that's not really the kind of guy that I'm all that interested in adding. So at $29.6 million a year, though, if you send out D'Angelo Russell, which makes the most sense here, you would still need to attach another contract beyond it, right? So it would be D'Lo, who makes 18.6 mil. You need to tack on another at least like 7 or 8 million. Maybe you you could send out Gabe Vincent, and cut salary a little bit, and but then you're trading your point guard depth, and this guy better work out. And best case scenario, you get like a first round pick back from Washington. And if the Lakers play poorly enough, maybe you turn into a seller and you take on Jordan Poole's contract, or you take on Zach LaVine's contract, and you kind of reshape your roster. Maybe you get a couple draft picks for taking on those albatross contracts, and you move forward that way. But of the additions, like, answering this actual question as it was asked, I would much rather take on Kuzma. For one thing, he makes $23.5 million a year. So that's $6 million less that you need to send out to bring him in. His contract actually de-escalates in value, which makes it more valuable the longer he is on your team. That sign me up for that. We also know that Kuzma is willing, like has in the past fulfilled a winning role, and didn't hate it. Like Jordan Poole hated it to the point where he was like asking out. I don't think Kuzma ever asked out. From everything I've been told, he didn't ask out. He certainly welcomed the trade and welcomed the challenge of going to a different situation. But it's a situation with Kuz where he goes back to a place that he's familiar. He goes back to a core that he has helped win a championship with before. And he just flat out, I think he's a better player. And I think he also plays a more important position, a position that the Lakers have a legitimate need at. So if you could turn Rui, who makes $17 million a year, and like Gabe into Kyle Kuzma, you take on a little bit less money, I believe, in that situation too, which I believe gets you under the first apron. I think the Lakers are above the first apron. That would just about get them under it. So you send Rui and you send Gabe to Washington. And part of the reason this works, by the way, is because the group that drafted Rui is no longer there. So that's going to help you, kind of convince an organization that previously had a guy to bring him back. That actually works. So you would send out $28 million in salary, bring back $23.5 million in salary. That's the kind of thing that I'm sure Jeannie Buss would be excited about. But that's like the kind of trade that I think the Lakers, if it costs you a first and maybe like a couple seconds, execute that trade now, right? You didn't get anything from Gabe last year. You keep D'Angelo Russell, so maybe you can trade him later in the season as well. And you go into next year with a starting lineup of D'Lo, Austin, Kuz, LeBron, and AD. You aren't going to stop a nosebleed. You're not like interested at all in defending anybody really. But like that's a really difficult offensive group to stop. You keep Jared Vanderbilt in this equation as well, who is kind of the yin to Kuzma's yang, where Vanderbilt makes his impact on the defensive side. Obviously, Kuz is a lot more offensive minded as well. Kuz has some creative chops because of the role that he played in Washington. He learned to handle a little bit more of that stuff, which helps with some second units as well. And that's kind of the way that I would go. I would the Lakers, I'm told, called Washington over the summer and had fairly productive talks about Kuzma. More productive talks, I'm told, than they had with Portland about Jeremy Grant, because Washington was more open to negotiation, whereas Portland is very much like, this is the price. Call me when you're ready to meet it. So I still think Kuzma is probably the player who feels the most likely to be a Laker eventually this season, if the Lakers are good enough to show that they should continue to push chips into the middle of the table. And again, I also like, this needs to be said as often as possible. The Lakers don't have control of their 2025 pick. So no matter how bad the Lakers are, if they completely bottom out, you don't benefit from it. The only team that benefits from the Lakers being potentially bad would be Atlanta, who got the 2025 pick from New Orleans, ironically, in the DeJounte Murray trade. So if it was just between Poole and Kuz on the market, I would much rather prefer the Lakers bring in Kuz. I just, and by the way, like in terms of like how open are all the interested parties here, from people I've spoken to, close to both sides of this equation, Kuz very interested in going back to be a Laker. Lakers very interested in Kyle Kuzma. All right, the next question here comes from Bashir at Bashir_1. if you got given access to that press conference of Rob and JJ on the 25th, what would you ask? Most reporters are scared to ask the real questions. Fans want to know, and I get it. The team might get rid of them if they ask too incriminating questions. It's not a matter of like the team's going to get rid of you. Like the Lakers would. The Lakers don't want that noise. Essentially, if they basically excommunicate a reporter for doing his job, the amount of crap that the Lakers would get for doing so is just not worth doing it. Right now, the Lakers are, going to do what they can to talk to that reporter and kind of do like the once the press conference ends, do like the hey, what the fuck, like what was that all about? If you ask, specifically pointed questions or unfair questions, so that happens sometimes, and then you'll also see situations like you've seen with Aaron, where he is, he hasn't been on the show in a while, in part because of his relationship with the Lakers and the Lakers, feeling a certain way about his relationship with the show. But like the reason reporters are more tactful in asking their questions to these interested parties is because they have to ask further questions of these interested parties. They have to talk to these people again. They have to see these people in the hallways when they're covering games and stuff like that. And if you basically, burn that relationship by way of a question um, that the interested party feels is unfair, that makes the rest of your job for the rest of that year very, very difficult. So, that's where that's coming from. I think that's an aspect of sports fandom that I think fans get pretty wrong sometimes, is like, why reporters ask questions the way that they do. It's for a purpose, and it's for a very practical and reasonable purpose. As far as like a question, so like I'll answer this question two ways. One, I'll answer it as if like I was a beat reporter who had to maintain my relationship with the Lakers moving forward. Two, I'll answer the question from like a purely fan perspective of like, if I could inject these guys with truth serum and I didn't have to worry about my relationship with the franchise and with these interested parties here moving forward, here's what I would ask. So first and foremost, if I was just a beat reporter, um, and I had to, manage that relationship while asking these questions that fans want to know about, I would probably start by asking Rob, like, do you feel like, because Rob has spoken about this in the past, right? So I would ask Rob, uh, you've spoken in the past about the responsibility franchises hold or have when they employ a LeBron James or a Kobe or a Steph or those all-time great players who are just who are doing what they can to remain competitive and want another opportunity or are playing at a high enough level to be able to compete for a championship, right? And Rob said that like the Lakers have a responsibility here to put LeBron, do whatever they possibly can to put LeBron in that position to be able to compete now while he is still playing at that kind of a level. And I would ask Rob, do you think that you are actually doing that? And do you think you can continue to do that or actually do that while while you hold on to these first round picks the way that you have? And we'll see. I mean, like Rob is a very good bullshitter. So there's a good chance that he would have he would be able to kind of sidestep the question, whatever. But that's what I would ask, right? And the reason I think it's fair is because he has spoken about that specifically in the past. So if he wants to get all hot and bothered about the fact that I asked that question, I would just say, no, I'm responding to something you have spoken about before. You have said this. You brought that up on your own. That was not a response to a question when he said it. And if you want to have a further back and forth about it, I'm open to it. But I don't think Rob, he probably would get angry or annoyed by the question because it does feel, kind of leading or whatever. And it is a tough question for him to ask, and he's going to respond as any human being would respond to a tough question. But I think while it's a tough question, I also think it's a fair one. And I think, um, like, essentially, one thing I've been thinking about a lot is the way that I cover the Lakers has everything to do with how I would want the Lakers covered if I was just a fan. How hard I am on the Lakers, how pointed I am in my reporting, how everything that I try to unearth is not done for like clickbait. Like, it's not. Trust me, if I know how to generate clicks. I did that while I was at Silver Screen. I've done that at other places. I've done that with other shows that I produce. On the side of this one, I know how to generate clicks. I know what fans are going to click on. Um, but I also think that, it's our responsibility. Those of us who do this kind of thing, it's our responsibility to do whatever we can to explain why certain things are going certain ways. And that's essentially what I do. And that's the kind of question that, Rob might not like, but would help explain why the Lakers find themselves in this kind of predicament and have been in this predicament for as long as they have. So that's where I would start with part A. Part B, what would just be in an unfair question or whatever would be like, Rob, do you feel like you are given enough resources to compete with the upper echelon teams that you're competing against? And that means a actual a human being fulfilling the general manager role, a more beefed out analytics department, any kind of pro scouting department. Like, do you feel like you are being put in a situation to succeed, given the expectations that come with this kind of position, especially on a LeBron James Lakers team? And that would be one that, again, Rob would never answer, and he would certainly never answer honestly. But and that would be the kind of answer that I would have some shit to handle later, because uh, the Lakers would hate that question, because that's a question about Genie. That's a question about Rob's bosses. And part of Rob's job is to kind of take heat away from his bosses. And that question would put those bosses directly into the kind of the line of fire here. So I don't think either of these questions would ever get answered, or well, asked, let alone answered. But you know, I'm just being honest with the two questions that I find myself trying to answer most often. And those are also the two questions that I think go the furthest in explaining why the Lakers are where they find themselves right now, where, for the most part in the regular season, they've been a mediocre team with LeBron James and Anthony Davis. They have some they have some playoff runs, and they have obviously a championship to speak for. But ever since that championship, it's been a pretty steady decline. And I think those two questions would go a long way in explaining why that decline has taken place. My last question here from Twitter is from Adam Skimriensky, who asks, how handsome is Ricardo Calafiori? I don't know who that person is. So I Googled how handsome this Calafiori guy is, or I Googled this Calafiori guy and pulled up this picture, which I will go ahead and add to our library here, at least temporarily, and see what you guys think. I can't believe I'm actually doing this. Oh, I'm not going to be able to do it as that kind of a file. Fantastic. But he's like a good looking guy. Like, looks like soccer player hot, I would say. I think he's like your typical soccer, like very good looking. Like, did you ever notice in that Ted Lasso show how like all of the soccer players were really good looking? Like, did you like? It's kind of weird, right? When I played, when I was in high school, like the soccer guys were always like the most popular. Here's a picture. He's like a good, I'd say he's good looking. Obviously, not my cup of tea. Given like not exactly what I'm personally interested in, but I could see why people find him attractive. He's got that like sleeve tattoo, which Jen's trying to get me to get a tattoo. Um, I just don't know if I mean, for one thing, my mom would murder me, but for the second thing, I just don't know if there's anything that I want on my body personally, forever, like for, in perpetuity. But no, I'd say he's good looking. Let's go ahead and segue awkwardly back to the live question. This question here, Lil Chris Johnson, 18. Why won't the Lakers hire somebody to help Rob? He's been terrible. I mean, so look, I don't think Rob has been terrible in aggregate. I think he's been suboptimal. Like he needs to be better than he's been to this point. I His performance over the last couple seasons, or maybe since the championship, would probably put him in the bottom quarter of executives in the NFL. Um, but he has that championship, so it's like that's going to keep him out of the range of being the worst in the NBA right now. Um, so I don't know. It just now I do think the more important part of this question than like how bad is Rob Pelinka is what I talked about earlier, where why won't the Lakers hire somebody to help Rob? Like, it's beyond me that the Lakers this offseason didn't promote somebody to general manager, didn't hire somebody to be their general manager, didn't hire somebody that would push Rob down to general manager. Like, it's insane that the Los Angeles Lakers don't have two people. One person is as the, whether it's the president or vice president of basketball operations, and also a general manager. It's criminal, honestly, that they don't. It's negligent that they don't, because clearly the organization isn't operating at its optimal level, and not having somebody in that position. And it's too late now. Like, the offseason is already done, so you'd be hiring a general manager for you know they just wouldn't have a chance to be able to help in any real capacity right now. You don't have a pro scouting team. That's insane. Like, that is beyond me. And I talked with when Sabrina was on the show, we talked about how some of these teams are employing longtime journalists to into their front office. That is just for information. So when you don't have a scouting department, you're already at a intelligence disadvantage. But you're also now that disadvantage is only growing as more of these teams hire more people to do that stuff. The Clippers, literally, like we've talked about it in the past, the Clippers have somebody on their staff who basically just like walks around and talks to people who know stuff, gives up information sometimes, but also gathers in information and then relays that information back to the Clippers, so that the Clippers are never surprised, not only by the way that their own negotiations go with certain teams because of the context that the negotiation is taking place, but maybe even more importantly, are just not surprised by anything that happens in the league. By the time even your best newsbreakers are hearing these things, let alone relaying them to you, the fan, those whispers have typically been out there for weeks. And so if the Lakers are like finding out, so the D'Angelo Russell thing is an example that I can use here, where I had been hearing that. So it started on a more general level where I had heard that players with player options, a lot of agents were basically advising their players who have those player options, hey, it sucks. I know opting in feels like, accepting defeat here in these negotiations, but we don't know what kind of money is for you on the other side of the decision to opt out. And so when I was hearing that, like, as a starting point in all of these situations, I essentially, started digging more specifically into the Lakers situation. And so with D'Angelo Russell. And when I started asking around league personnel, man, Miles is thrilled about how this podcast is going. But when I started asking around about D'Angelo Russell, again, league personnel were like, where's he going? Where's he getting the kind of money that he's expecting to be able to get? Orlando's getting KCP. That's their focus, is KCP. So he's not going to go there. He's not the kind of guy that the Spurs would go after. They have the cap space for it. Doesn't make any sense for Detroit. They have Cade there, so he's not going to, they don't want him to take possessions away from Cade. Where's he going to go? And so, like, by combining these things in like the week or so leading up to when D'Angelo finally opted into his contract, I was telling you guys here on the show, I'm really starting to think this guy's going to opt in. I just don't see the market. And based on how things went, after he opted in, it sure as hell feels like the Lakers were surprised that he opted in. And you can't be surprised by something that your own player does. Given the fact that Christian Wood got surgery now a couple weeks before training camp will even start, and given, how the Lakers didn't make any additions to the roster this offseason at that position, it certainly kind of feels like they were surprised by Christian Wood's surgery. So again, like, these are situations where the Lakers are being surprised by their own intel. Whereas other teams are kind of adding people to their ranks to help with league-wide intel, not their intel. They're on top of that, but they're hiring people to help with league-wide intel. And that's something that the Lakers are just completely deficient at. Like, that is something relative to their competition. That is something that the Lakers just don't have a ton of. And it needs to improve. So those are the places, like, why won't the Lakers hire? Like, if I was to break that question into two parts, Rob has been terrible. Okay, sure. That doesn't matter as much to me. It sucks, but it doesn't matter as much to me as why. And the first part of that question explains the second part. All right. Let me see if we have any more. Yeah, I think we're good. Short show today. On this Sunday afternoon, I'm going to get back to enjoying some family time. And I hope you guys do as well. We have more shows lined up for you guys here. Obviously, throughout the week, we'll have Raj stopping by a couple of times. We're going to continue with the Contender Series or with the Trade Partner Series. I also just want to bring on some general NBA knowledge people who I want to get a feel for how they feel about this team as well. And then, like, training camp is like, the Lakers play a game in like 12 days as I'm recording now, 11 by the time you guys are listening to this in podcast form. So we are just racing to the beginning of the season. Also have some fun news about the show, about my content, hopefully to be able to share with you guys, closer to the season as well. So until then, and until the next time you guys hear from me, I'm Anthony Irwin saying, have a great rest of your day. Make somebody else's. Subscribe to the show, like the show, and I will talk to you on Monday. Have a good one, everybody.